Irreversible. Irreversible is a film so disturbing it caused mass walkouts at Cannes. So, buckle up. The film is told completely backwards, and it opens outside a gay SM club called Rectum. The camera spins violently while people are being carried out on stretchers and others are arrested. We travel back in time and go inside, where two men, Marcus and Pierre, are frantic and completely out of control. A fight breaks out, and Marcus's arm is violently broken, and we watch a man's face getting pulverized by Pierre using a fire extinguisher. Another man stands nearby, watching with a disturbed grin. We don't know who the victim is or why this is happening, only that someone just died horribly. As the film rewinds, we learn what they're looking for: a man called the Tapeworm. They got the name on the street from a transsexual prostitute. They need him because the Tapeworm did that terrible thing that rhymes with ape to Alex, Marcus's girlfriend, and Pierre's ex. Then we see the horrible sight of a broken and beaten Alex being loaded into an ambulance. Her injuries are catastrophic, and the paramedics aren't sure she'll survive. The film rewinds again. Alex is walking home alone through a red-lit underpass. When she notices someone being attacked, she intervenes, and the man immediately turns on her, while the prostitute from before runs off. Now we see the man's face clearly, and it's not the man who was killed at Rectum, it's the grinning one standing next to him. What follows is 9 uninterrupted minutes of one of the most uncomfortable scenes in cinema. The camera just refuses to cut away. It forces the audience to endure the violence in full length. It's infamous for a reason. Only after that do we learn why Alex was alone. Earlier that night, she and Marcus were at a party. Marcus got drunk and high, behaving so badly that Alex left, asking Pierre to look after him. If Marcus had stayed sober, she never would have been in that tunnel. The final scenes rewind to the beginning of the day. We see Alex and Marcus, happy and in love. They talk about their dreams and hopes for the future. Alex smiles after taking a pregnancy test. In the last scene, she lies in a park, enjoying herself, fully oblivious to what's coming. Then a title card appears. Time destroys everything. And so it did. There Will Be Blood. There Will Be Blood is a movie about greed. It's also an incredible viewing experience, watching Daniel Day-Lewis drink everyone else's milkshake. Daniel plays Daniel Plainview, a lone prospector at the turn of the century. He breaks his leg in a mine, crawls out of the hole, and drags himself across the desert to sell the silver he found. From the very beginning, Daniel has one singular goal: power through wealth, no matter the cost. He strikes oil in California and reinvents himself as a respectable family man, adopting an orphaned boy, H.W., after his real father dies on Daniel's rig. Daniel appears to care for the boy, but he also uses the child to appear trustworthy to landowners, and it works. Daniel is led to a massive oil deposit in a small town. There he meets Eli, a preacher who wants the same things Daniel does: money, influence, and control. The difference is that Eli uses faith as his tool. The pair clash constantly over land and authority. Daniel refuses to let Eli bless the well before drilling. Soon after, an explosion kills a worker and permanently deafens H.W., and he is shipped away to a special school for deaf children. Eli remains the one thing Daniel cannot simply buy: spiritual authority. And when Eli forces Daniel to endure a humiliating public baptism in exchange for drilling rights, making him confess that he abandoned his child, it's the deepest blow Daniel ever takes, and it's the last time Eli has power over him. Years later, Daniel has everything and nothing. By 1927, he is a filthy rich alcoholic, living alone in a massive mansion, firing guns at the walls. When a grown-up H.W. visits to ask for his blessing to start an independent company, Daniel's ego explodes. He mocks H.W.'s deafness and reveals the boy's true parentage, calling him a bastard from a basket. H.W. leaves after thanking God he is not related to Daniel. Then a broke Eli visits Daniel in his private bowling alley, begging for a business deal to save himself from his bad investments. Daniel can smell the desperation, and he forces Eli to renounce his faith, declaring himself a false prophet. Then, after Eli sells his soul, Daniel delivers the iconic milkshake speech, revealing he has already siphoned the oil Eli is trying to sell. Then, Daniel chases Eli through the bowling alley and beats him to death with a bowling pin. When his butler arrives, Daniel sits next to the body and says, "I'm finished." He has won, and there is absolutely nothing left. Das Boot. In the beginning of World War II, German U-boats were the Grey Wolves, the undisputed masters of the Atlantic, easily picking off lone merchant ships, threatening to strangle Britain's supply lines. But by the time we joined the crew of the U-96 in this German anti-war movie, those days are long gone. Now, the hunters have become the hunted. The convoy system, allied sonars, depth charges, and air patrols has turned the former superweapons into metal death traps. The crew manning this tin can is not the goose-stepping polished super sailors the propaganda tells you about. They are filthy, exhausted, and terrified men. They endure weeks of mind-numbing boredom, broken only by moments of pure, soul-shattering terror. They are hunted by destroyers, depth-charged, and pushed to the absolute limit of human endurance. They are led by the Old Man, a cynical, battle-hardened captain, who has long since lost faith in the fatherland that he is supposed to be fighting for. What matters now is getting his crew home alive. Then comes the order, sending them on a suicide mission. The Strait of Gibraltar. It is a gauntlet of British warships they have no hope of passing. After a harrowing attack, the U-96 sinks to the bottom of the ocean, far beyond the submarine's crush depth. The bolts are popping, the hull is groaning, and the air is running out. Against all odds, through sheer grueling labor and the refusal to die, they repair the boat. They blow the ballast, they surface, and they limp back to France. They have survived the impossible, and they arrive at the docks of La Rochelle on Christmas Eve. A brass band is playing, and high-ranking officers are waiting to pin medals on their chests. For a fleeting moment, the audience feels a sense of relief. Then, the bombs fall. Allied planes strafe the harbor, and the men you have begun to care for through the last 5 hours, the men who survived the horrors of the Atlantic, are torn apart on the dock. The captain, bleeding out on the concrete, watches as his beloved submarine slowly sinks into the oily water of the safe harbor. The vessel that carried them through hell. The vessel that had become their survival. Their collective soul, its meaningless destruction, turns their entire journey into a cruel joke. Once the boat disappears beneath the surface, the captain simply collapses and dies. Shutter Island. On the surface, Shutter Island looks like a classic noir mystery. It's 1954, and U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels arrives at a fortress-like hospital for the criminally insane to find a missing patient, a woman who had drowned her own children. The island is shrouded in fog, and there are rumors of secret experiments and lobotomies performed in a remote lighthouse. Teddy is the hero we are rooting for, the righteous lawman uncovering a dark conspiracy. He suffers migraines, violent flashbacks from liberating Dachau, and recurring dreams of his wife, Dolores, who died in a fire set by a pyromaniac named Andrew Lettuce. Teddy is convinced that Lettuce is a patient on the island, and he hopes to find him. And oh my, he does. It turns out that there is a conspiracy on the island, but when he finally reaches the lighthouse, he finds only a desk and a doctor. Turns out, Teddy Daniels doesn't exist. Leo's character is Andrew Lettuce, who is not actually a pyromaniac, but still, he is the hospital's most dangerous patient. He's been institutionalized for 2 years, and his partner, Chuck, is actually his psychiatrist. The entire investigation was an elaborate, last-ditch roleplay staged by the hospital staff. A gamble to break Andrew out of his delusions and save him from a lobotomy. The reality Andrew ran from is unbearable. His wife, Dolores, was severely mentally ill and drowned their 3 children. In a moment of grief and rage, Andrew shot her. Unable to live with what he'd done, his mind invented a fire, a villain, and a heroic identity to escape the truth. The scheme worked. Andrew remembers everything, and the doctors believe he's cured. But then comes the final morning. Andrew sits on the steps with his psychiatrist and calmly slips back into the Teddy persona. To the doctor, this is a tragedy. It means Andrew has relapsed. It means the experiment failed, and the only option left to protect the staff is to perform a lobotomy, effectively erasing Andrew's mind. But before he's taken away, Andrew asks one final question. Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And then we realize that Andrew is perfectly sane. He is faking it. He chooses to have his mind wiped clean, willingly walking toward oblivion, choosing the peace of a hollowed-out mind over the agony of the truth. The invasion of the body snatchers. An amorphous parasitic alien race abandons its dying planet and travels to Earth as spores. And if you fall asleep, it will replace you with a cold, emotionless copy. In this 1979 movie, set in San Francisco, Elizabeth Driscoll brings home a strange but beautiful flower. The next morning, her husband is distant and cold, and the flower is gone. She believes he is an imposter, and others are experiencing the same thing. A man insists his wife isn't really his wife. A woman no longer recognizes her husband. A man is hunted in the street by strangers. It is like the whole city changed overnight. Elizabeth tells her colleague, Health Inspector Matthew Bennell. Matthew tries to make sense of it, but Elizabeth doesn't buy it. She's sure the man in her home is an imposter. The truth comes out piece by piece. The flowers grow into pods. The pods form human bodies, exact replicas, down to memories and habits. The copying only happens while someone sleeps. When it's done, the original body collapses into gray dust. The replacements are emotionless and cold. But when they are exposed, or when they identify an unconverted human, they point and emit a high-pitched, inhuman scream to alert the others. Matthew, Elizabeth, and their friends Jack and Nancy try to stay awake. Jack sacrifices himself to save the others, and Nancy follows him. They are separated, and Jack is assimilated, but Nancy discovers that the pod people recognize their own kind through mere observation. She learns that if you show no emotion, if you walk with a vacant stare and stay perfectly calm, you can hide in plain sight. But sometimes, hiding your emotions can be quite difficult. And you can't stay awake forever either. Elizabeth eventually falls asleep. Matthew holds her as her body breaks down in his arms. Moments later, a new Elizabeth rises from the ground. Beautiful, but completely foreign to him. Matthew manages to blow up a pod factory, and seemingly manages to get away. In the final scene, Matthew is back at work. He is emotionless like everyone else, blending in perfectly. Then he takes a walk, and he meets Nancy. And for a split second, she lets the mask slip. She calls for him, gives him a tiny, hopeful smile, thinking she's found her friend. But Matthew doesn't smile back. Instead, he points a finger at her and lets out that inhuman, piercing scream. Black Swan. Black Swan is a movie about ballet and body horror and psychological terror. Nina is an innocent ballerina who lives with her mother, a former dancer who controls Nina's food, her sleep, and her body. When the ballet company announces a new production of Swan Lake, Nina wants the lead role more than anything. The part demands two extremes, the innocent white swan and the malevolent black swan. Nina can dance the white swan perfectly, but she fears the black swan. Her director tells her that she lacks the raw, uninhibited darkness needed for the black swan. To find it, Nina undergoes total psychological collapse. She begins seeing herself in mirrors, the reflection moving when she isn't. She finds scratches on her back she doesn't remember making. She becomes fixated on Lily, a new dancer who represents everything Nina isn't. She's relaxed, careless, and confident in ways Nina has never been allowed to be. Nina sees Lily as a predator circling her role, yet she is also drawn to her freedom. As opening night approaches, feathers begin pushing through Nina's skin, and her legs seem to snap and bend backward like a swan's. She hallucinates a wild night of drugs and sex with Lily, only to realize the next morning that it never happened. On opening night, Nina falters as the White Swan and falls on stage. Panicked, she retreats to her dressing room to find Lily already dressed in her costume, ready to replace her. In a fit of paranoid rage, Nina smashes a mirror and stabs Lily with a shard of glass. She hides the body and returns to the stage. By killing her rival, she finally embraces the darkness and has transcended. She has physically and symbolically transformed into the Black Swan, giving the performance of the century. But when she returns to her room, she finds Lily alive and well. There is no body. Nina looks down in horror to find the glass shard protruding from her own stomach. The Lily, living inside Nina's head, has been a hallucination, a version of herself defined by freedom and ordinary human desire, imperfection. And Nina killed these urges, standing between her and the perfect performance. But in the process, she destroyed herself. Despite the gaping wound in her abdomen, Nina returns for the final act. She dances the White Swan's ending, jumping from the stage cliff onto a mattress below. As the audience erupts in a standing ovation, her mother included, Nina lies on the mat, blood spreading across her costume, staring up at the lights. "I felt it," she says with tears in her eyes. Perfect. And the screen goes white. Take Shelter. Take Shelter is in many ways a modern retelling of Noah's Ark and Cassandra. Curtis is a working-class man living in rural Ohio. He has a steady job, a loving wife named Samantha, and a young deaf daughter. And then he begins to be plagued by terrifying apocalyptic visions. Curtis dreams of apocalyptic storms, rain that looks thick and oily, swarms of black birds, people close to him suddenly turning violent. Each vision feels more real than the last, and Curtis wakes up convinced that something terrible is coming, but he doesn't tell anyone. Instead, he starts working on the old storm shelter in his backyard, and as he expands it, he drains his savings, steals equipment from work, and damages his reputation in town, all to prepare for a disaster he can't prove is real. Curtis knows his mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at the same age. The fear that he's following the same path hangs over every decision he makes. Is he preparing for the end of the world or for his own breakdown? Curtis loses his job, his closest friend turns against him, and at a community dinner, Curtis finally snaps, shouting at his neighbors that a devastating storm is coming and that none of them are prepared.
You are not prepared!
And lo and behold, an actual tornado warning hits. Curtis rushes his family into the shelter. They wait for hours. Curtis hears the storm outside, convinced this is what he's been preparing for. After hours, Samantha hears nothing and begs him to open the door. Curtis finally does. The storm has passed. The neighborhood is damaged, but standing. Curtis was wrong, and he accepts that he is sick and agrees to enter psychiatric care. Before admitting himself, the family goes on a beach vacation. While playing in the sand, the daughter signs one word to her parents: storm. Then, the thick, oily rain from Curtis's dreams begins to fall. As a massive tsunami and multiple waterspouts loom on the horizon, Samantha realizes the truth. It turns out Curtis wasn't crazy, he was a prophet, and now they are the ones who are not prepared. Blackadder. Blackadder is a historical sitcom, satire with sharp insults and dark humor. Rowan Atkinson, Hugh Laurie, Tony Robinson, Stephen Fry, Tim McInerney, all at their peak. It's relentlessly funny. And then, at the very end, the show reminds you the kind of setting all that laughter was happening in. Across 4 short series, the setting changes, but the pattern stays the same. Each generation of Edmund Blackadder is intelligent, trapped, and surrounded by fools with authority. In the first series, though, he's a dim medieval prince grasping for power. By the second, in Elizabethan England, he has become clever and manipulating. And in the third, he is a butler during the Regency, using his abilities to quietly running circles around an idiot aristocrat. All the Blackadder survives history by being smarter than everyone else. Then comes Blackadder Goes Forth. Now it's 1917. They are all in the trenches, and every scheme Blackadder comes up with has one goal: avoid going over the top, avoid the whistle, and avoid the end. The jokes are still there. Baldric's terrible plans, Melchit's catastrophic leadership, George's wide-eyed optimism. But in the final episode, the comedy thins out, as the characters realizes that they are going to die. Then the whistle blows, and Edmund Blackadder wishes them all good luck, everyone. And as the characters go over the top, the canned laughter stops. The charge dissolves into slow motion, and a nostalgic tune starts playing. The scene fades, the trenches disappear, and in its stead a field of poppies appears, the British symbol of remembrance. It's apparent that they all died in the charge, and that's it. Alright, that was some of the darkest endings in fiction. Let me know in the comments which ending you think is the darkest, and why. There will be more, so stay tuned. And as always, thanks for watching. Cheers.